Okay, we are going to jump in and get started. We've got a short and sweet one for everyone looking forward to the holiday weekend starting tomorrow, or some people starting end of day today. So probably 25 minutes plus or minus, just a real easy kind of lunch and learn depending on what time zone you're in. But thank you for joining. We've got some folks on the line who are uh, longtime Clarity clients, know us and love us well, and also a number of people on here who are just kind of hearing from us for the first time. So welcome into the discussions. As always, we're talking about how we in the healthcare correspondence industry can get the absolute most from an engagement perspective, out of the spend, out of the effort, out of the teams that are supporting member correspondence. And so we're just looking at a particular slice of that today, as we've got it titled Navigating the Brand Jungle. We are increasingly hearing from our clients that we've got multiple brands that we have to put in front of our members for any number of reasons that we'll talk about today, but it can feel crowded. And how can we do that most effectively? How can we continue to strive to delight our members while also including some of this necessary information? So that's what we're going to dive into, just give you some ideas, some tips, tricks, and also, as we always hope, if these are useful slides or discussion points, what we really love is when we hear that these end up in some of your ideation meetings. So everyone will have access to the slides and to PDFs of these. We also have these recorded and posted on our website. So however you like to find these and really put them into practice, that's where I think this gets more valuable. Of course, for Clarity clients on the line, talking with your account executives is an easy way to pull this into the discussions that we're having with you ongoing. So without further ado, let's get started. We are going to be chatting today on just a few things. One, again, very, very brief, but for folks that are just starting to hear about Clarity, maybe joining us for the first time, really brief overview. Hopefully that gives context into why we are then talking about layered branding in our designs for member correspondence and some of the key considerations there. And then, as we always hope to do, we want to give you real life examples of what this can look like, kind of try and put you in a headspace where you can envision your own collateral, your own assets, your own member correspondence, and what this might look like when we blend some of these ideas in with it. For those of you who are hearing my voice for the first time, my name is Drew Corbett. I've been with Clarity for about 4 years, and come from a background entirely in the healthcare strategy space. So both in a consulting capacity for strategy teams at payers and providers as well, actually, and then also a lot of time working directly with member programs, member engagement platforms. So some of the digital health technologies that are out there that we're trying to get members involved in, I've kind of been on that side of industry as well. So hope that brings a unique perspective, especially as we think about then what Clarity has and can offer, and how we can sort of blend all those pieces together simply to get our members involved in as many things that can benefit their health as possible. So really taking it from the top, again, for those of you just sort of meeting us by way of this discussion today, thanks for joining. And you probably know that Clarity Software Solutions is a well-established company. We've been around for over 15 years. We are 100% focused on the healthcare industry. And as we all know, from a compliance and a security and just a healthcare operations perspective, it's important to us that we really stick to that niche and focus on delivering for you. So we have over 100 healthcare clients that we're privileged enough to work with. You're seeing just sort of a blend of some of our clients here down below, but really we focus on any entity out there that is corresponding with end members. And that ends up being to the tune of over 140 million lives that are in some way, shape, or form engaged through everything that we do. And when we really think about who we are, and it's kind of the central to our DNA, it's a really complex environment if you're a payer that's trying to communicate with a very broad, diverse, segmented, complex membership. And so to have a software and an engagement platform that allows you to manage all of that complexity, all of that nuance, and ultimately get your core communications out to your members, be that via SMS, via email, via print modalities, however it is, there has to be a central place to manage that. And that's what we at Clarity really strive to provide is something that makes the management of that complexity really easily. What that looks like for a lot of your end members is they're going to find things either on their phone, in their email inbox, or in their mailbox that looks like their member onboarding kits that you all work on, that looks like those regulatory or compliance documents. But really the meat and potatoes of this is the ID cards, welcome letters, EOBs, notifications, anything that has your brand on it and needs to get in front of that member. That's what our platform helps to manage, distribute, and ultimately get out to everyone in your membership. So that's, again, just for folks hearing this for the first time, want to make sure you're seated and understand where Clarity is coming from. But really where we're going for the kind of specialty of the discussion today, it's all about brand. And, these are things that might resonate with you, whether you are involved in one sort of monolithic brand. United Healthcare is a great example of this, of while there are many partners and contractors, et cetera, we sort of have a single brand company with various products or services underneath. We've got endorsed and hybrid brands. Often the time, those are a function of M&A activity, of really like big entities coming together, both of which had independent brand recognition prior. Sub-brands, I think Blue Cross Blue Shield represents this really well. I know I've done work in former lives with Florida Blue, for example. So under that Blue Cross Blue Shield sort of authority, but still having a very distinct image there as kind of a sub-brand. And then we're going to be spending most of our time today on partner brands. So increasingly, we have entities that then contract with independent brands under that brand umbrella. So something that is very, very separate, very discrete, very on its own in those partnerships, but still part of the corporate brand architecture as the member is seeing it. And that's an idea that we're going to come back to a lot today, is really, it's important how the member is perceiving this, much more so than anything else that's happening behind the scenes in terms of sort of how we're contracted with different logos or different brands. So we wanted to just talk about some design strategies for managing multiple brands. This is kind of the fun part of the presentation, but like we see this all the time, right? And it's actually kind of amazing if you start opening your eyes to it, how frequently there are just consumer brands that are in partnership with another company. Now, the behind the scenes on this is, a Visa, for example, might have a build partner or buy kind of an option when they think about offering new services to members. They're, of course, not going to buy or build something like Amazon. And so partnership becomes a really viable way that they can do that. So where we've got these Visa Prime cards, where we've got these American Express Marriott cards, where we've got, I think, just a really kitschy and fun one, but we've seen things as provocative as, tennis shoes and ice cream. We've seen things like we've got, big consumer brands like Taco Bell and Doritos coming together. So all of these things that we might think are sort of inorganic from a company standpoint, if they have brand strategies that are implemented with really deliberate intent as to what is the hierarchy and what are we trying to present to the member, how are we addressing the right value proposition, these things can be done very elegantly. Sort of at the other end of the health spectrum from our ice cream is then just an example of Crest and Scope. So things that really do seem like they fit well together. That whole spectrum can be addressed really nicely depending on how it's approached. This good co-branding is all around us, but similarly, and the risk at the other end of the spectrum is bad co-branding is also all around us. And it's really easy to tell, especially for an end member who is being asked to make sense of something. It's really easy to tell if something was just slapped together. And I think, the NASCAR is a great analogy and no pun intended, a great vehicle to talk about, from a end member perspective, where co-branding can sort of go wrong. If we're just simply slapping the logo on because someone is paid to slap the logo on, that's going to be overwhelmingly clear to an end member. And where that really matters is when we're trying to help somebody navigate something as complex as their health journey. And so this is like, I think, a nice spectrum to think about what do those really nice co-brandings look like, all the way over to what is something that's a little bit haphazard. And I would argue from a design perspective and a member perspective, like really pretty disrespectful to say, here, you deal with it. We've gotten all these brands together, but you sort of deal with deciphering how they fit. Our goal at Clarity, when we talk about ensuring that member correspondence is fueling engagement, our goal is always keep it simple. And so, we're looking at just a simple rendition of a welcome letter here. But for folks that have been working with us on some of these actions for a long time, this will feel, just like home, or maybe redundant from what you've heard from us in our account teams. But how do we simplify, simplify, simplify? Less cognitive load, fewer words, more icons, clear call outs. All of these things are intended to really be the core DNA of a piece of member correspondence. Yes, there's important information, but in a really healthy tension with that, we're always striving to keep things simple. Now, when we're simply talking about one brand, ABC Health, as we'll think a lot about today, that's a relatively easy task. And that doesn't mean it's always easy to administer or get through approval processes, etc. But just the idea is we've got one brand, one ask, and that's all pretty simple. Now, the challenge is that increasingly healthcare is not simple. And all of us are now working within entities that have various strategic partnerships with various other entities that have hyper specialty in a particular way that they reach out and support members. And all of them also have very strong and very proud brands. And that's where this starts to get a little bit shaky in terms of the member just having an autopilot orientation to, okay, what is the brand hierarchy here? What have I already paid for? What have I not paid for? What am I being asked to pay for? What's available to me now versus might be in the future, etc. All these considerations can start to be, candidly, this is just kind of an olive branch to all of you on the phone. This is a ton to manage. And when we're hearing things like we want to see more adoption or more engagement in certain programs that we've partnered with, make sure that the members are seeing this, that's not exactly an easy task. But it is the one that we have in front of us, and the ones that with just a few little strategies, I think that we can start to make better sense of and have this not feel so complex and difficult. We always start with where's the member at? So this person is out there living his or her life, really not absorbed in the sort of like healthcare brand partnership, healthcare correspondence industry. They're just receiving a message like the other 10,000 that they receive in a day. And so acknowledging when we're distributing something that might encourage both your own health plan brand, but also a secondary brand or another layered brand in that same piece of correspondence, it's important to come to the table and just brainstorm what those common concerns might sound and feel like. And so we've got some that are just listed out here, but anything from, are these brands affiliated with each other? And if so, how? How can that be made immediately intuitive? Is this going to cost me extra? Is this included in my coverage? Is this added coverage I'm being asked to purchase? All of these things are happening in like rapid succession. As soon as somebody sees, I'm going to keep saying, just like a welcome letter that includes a secondary brand on it, it is an onslaught of, first and foremost, I don't know as much as you know, so you got to help meet me where some of my concerns are and start to alleviate them. So this, I think, is just a great exercise. It's a great place to invite in, honestly, call center teams. It's a great place to invite in account managers from within your organizations to understand what do some of these common concerns and pain points feel like when members are receiving this correspondence. And then we can start to make sure that they're tackled. It almost becomes a checklist. When we end up with our final copy, our final letter that might be going out to somebody, are we addressing a lot of these things? And if so, we know that we're starting to be on a better path. A little bit of a cheat sheet from our perspective of successfully introducing those second brands. And we're going to sort of carry this 1 through 4 through the next few slides. One, it's important to establish trust first and foremost. And this is really anchored around your primary brand. So you all, as the health plan, you have both, I mean, you have a true contract as well as just sort of an understood contract associated with, I signed up for my benefits with this entity, and that is my anchor point. Anything else has to be in the context of that trust that I've got, that I'm paying premiums to, that is supporting all of the care that I'm getting. That's where we want to anchor and where we want to really establish with our member that, yes, that is still home base. So dignify that implicit contract that you have, and then stay consistent with that across all communications. I'll again empathize that a lot of these proud brands that are offering point solutions, they also want to be the biggest brand, but it's really important that from your perspective, you're maintaining that simplicity, and that first and foremost, this is a member of this health plan and everything is under that umbrella. So one, establish trust. Two, this is unbelievably brief. I mean, this is happening in like a nanosecond, but we want to quickly request action. And it's not one that I fully intend to be taken up yet by the member, but there's a real difference of reading, again, I'll refer to that piece of paper and saying, is this a notification communication? In which case, I'm sort of giving a certain amount of attention to it. Or is this an action communication? And there's that sort of microsecond of we're establishing a sense of opportunity or ownership that's going to lead the reader to just read for a little bit longer, to get a little bit more context out of what that action is. Because I'm sort of on that cliffhanger of, is this an action that is taking up an opportunity? Is this something I need to do in order to maintain in good standing? But requesting that action quickly lets the member know that they are involved in the content that's subsequent on, the welcome letter, the EOB, whatever that might be. So once we've got that tiny flicker of attention associated with you need to take action, that's when we want to really empathize and add value. And so leaning into those, what is the context in which the member is getting this information? What are the pain points, the motivators? All of those things that we thought about on the subsequent slide, now is the time to address those so that they can be in the context of, if you're going to take action, well, you've got work to do, because I, as a member, don't know exactly what the context is here. Now you need to fill in some of those pain points and those motivators. This is really the opportunity that we've created with the action request, is then to have a little bit longer leash to add that value and really have that discussion. And then finally, let's re-request the action again. And so let's close it with, and so in context of everything that we can add value for you, let's get signed up, or let's start this now. This is a design technique called a Z layout. And what this does is effectively mirrors what we just talked through. So the natural gaze of a person who sees, in this case, we're looking at, obviously the very common web example works the exact same if we're looking at a print modality. But if we're seeing a logo, okay, I know where I am. This is something that is a brand I'm associated with. Then we're immediately asking for action. Then we're following by going lower left to that context, that helpful text, that value add, and then again, a call to action. So if I naturally assume that as a reader of any content, I'm actually sort of blowing by everything that's right in the heart of or in the middle of what I'm looking at, be that a web portal, a web page, or a piece of printed collateral. And so optimizing the corners of this page are how I want to design for engagement and action. And those corners sort of lay out in a cadence that we need to establish that trust. We need to recognize with the member that there is an action to be taken. We need to contextualize that action, and then we're going to ask again. So obviously, this is something that's, I mean, like once you see this, you can't unsee it, especially when you look at web. You'll start to see that this is a format that's really common, and you've sort of dissected it here to recognize what it is the design is trying to achieve. But it's no different if we start to look at our correspondence. And so Fortunately, a lot of just the general layout of correspondence is going to be conducive to this. But when we start thinking through the back end of the taxonomy, it helps us to be smarter about what we're placing where and why. So if I'm, again, using that top left opportunity where I know that the member's eye is going to naturally gaze first, we've got that logo that is yours and that is bedrock and that is the establishment of trust. From there, as we gaze across to the right, and as a user's eye naturally will, we're directed towards that top right feature, which we call a Johnson box, which is oftentimes where we're doing our primary call to sign up. And so I now immediately have that call to action text associated with that real estate in my natural gaze that's saying, hey, you're involved in this, get involved, sign up, register, log back in, whatever that call to action might be. And then we're dropping down to, okay, what's the context around this? Here we've got a bulleted list and an unfulfilled checklist that's sort of contextualizing you've done 1 and 2. But number 3 is of great value to you, and we're asking you then again over at number 4 to re-request that action or to re-request the sign-in. This is one of those really interesting taxonomies where we might naturally do this and not even know why. But once we've started to recognize that there's actually a science behind this, and we start designing within that science, it becomes really crystal clear what type of verbiage or what type of call to action we want to put on here. So now thinking this Z pattern layout, we're going to look at a couple of examples without the overlay, but notice how your eye does just start to naturally gravitate towards a few different places. Now, they're not all going to fit exactly just because of the types of correspondence we're looking at, but the general flow of this, especially bullet points number 1 and bullet point number 2, are ones that we can carry through most of our design work. So now we're talking about balancing brands. Again, that external brand. So we're starting off with an EOB in this case. We've got that anchor point of trust around a health plan logo. We then have a call to action around a third-party partner. So in that case, if we're living with diabetes and you as a health plan have partnered with that diabetes prevention or diabetes reversal program, that is the next thing that we're going to see that's associated with the action. And then that Johnson box really just sort of grabs the opportunity while the eye is in that place to say, okay, is this relevant? Start to do some of that value add right there at that top right corner. This is also placed just the tip at the bottom here. It's interesting, depending on how many pages and impressions you've got to work with, we oftentimes use footers on a front page that I would challenge could be perhaps later in a document. Now, a contact information is always going to be helpful, but it's also a member expectation that that contact info is somewhere within the document and usually pretty easy to reference. But if it doesn't have to take up that primary real estate, it's a place that you can continue that Z pattern and potentially just add an alternative call to action. An easy way to think about this is if you ever have received an email that has a PS in it, that PS is typically the most read part of an email outside of a subject line. Similar principle holds here. I've kind of gotten this natural information overload at the top. I've got the context around it, but my eye is then going to drop across all of the sort of center of this page in the example here and look down to the bottom. And if that's where we're reinforcing that call to action, it's where we're going to tip another 2, 3, 4 out of 100 people to actually complete and take that action. So applied to the scale that you all reach, that's where we can really outperform relative to not including things like that, maybe in a footer. Couple other comments on EOBs, just as refreshers, just as really important engagement documents in and of themselves. These are the really high volume touch points. When we think about opportunities to engage, welcome letters, ID cards, things of that nature are really important in their own right, and we'll talk about those on the next slide. But for those with chronic conditions or those who are frequently receiving care, these are really central documents to intervening and saying, hey, I know you're on this care journey. we've either got a different way that you can pursue that care journey, or we've got a great tool for you associated with that care journey. So just remember that in addition to the design and layering those additional brands in on something like this, in and of itself, the EOB is a great document to do some of that promotion, some of that engagement around those key partners. Well suited to second brands. I mean, oftentimes people are looking for, yeah, I just went to that doctor, but what else is available for me to help on this journey? And what might be available outside of a doctor's office? That's where those partners fit really nicely as an extension of a care journey into something like an EOB document. Next one we've got is just on welcome letters. So same thing, I won't belabor the whole point again, but we've got the beginnings of that sort of Z layout. We've got trust, followed by we've got a call to action, followed by we've got context, and then again, reinforce that call to action. For the just fundamental premise of these welcome letters and why these are also such a ripe opportunity to include that secondary brand, these are the big, wide castanet membership distributions. And so when we're thinking about open enrollment periods, when we're thinking about reissues, this is when we might have a partner that's included who, I've listed telemedicine here as the example. If something is available to the masses, the 100% of the membership, the 90% of the membership, whatever that might be, great opportunity to do something a little less segmented and a little less personalized here. We've got a really high read rate, especially if we're feeling that card inside something like this. That's really where we see that there are nearly a guarantee that the message is going to have some visibility. And of course, one thing that's not shown on the page here, but we've got sticker reinforcement. So just another place to re-ask for that action to be taken. Finally, on member guides here, this is where we have a little more space to breathe. So if I'm going to depart from that Z pattern, it's when I've got multiple pages to work with. And here you're seeing like a full page effectively dedicated towards just one of these third-party partners. That gives you the opportunity to really add more context. And so in that step 3 about adding context, addressing barriers, addressing concerns or knowledge gaps, member guides are a great opportunity to do this at sort of like a much wider breadth. So when we think about the personalization of these, if you've got somebody that does have a chronic condition and availability to a program, this is where you can go long form with that. An alternative approach is if you've got more of, man, we have so many opportunities for members, we just need to make sure that they're all visible. A member guide is a place that you actually have the real estate to do that. And so that smaller overlay in the image, you're just kind of seeing tertiary, quaternary, as many logos and brands and programs as you've got. This can be listed in a little bit more of a buffet style, and that context can be less overwhelming because you've got the space on full page, you've got multiple pages to do this. That's a nice place that you can sort of deviate from a graphic design perspective from that Z layout. Just a couple other really quick hits, but we always encourage with these, when you have your brand portfolio or your program ecosystem, program portfolio, think about how those can be segmented and personalized. Nothing is going to turn that member off faster than if you present something that is totally irrelevant to them. In fact, that can kind of be a detractor of trust, and that can be those high volumes into the call center of, why am I getting something about musculoskeletal conditions when I don't have one? This really is a turnoff. And when we think about like CAP surveys, for example, and we're starting to ask questions of members of, hey, how well does your plan make you feel like you're known? This is where we can kind of be a turnoff to members. So segmentation is really important. Again, harking back to our platform, the ability to segment through that, those are the places where you can really fine tune who's receiving what message and make sure that message is personalized. Remember clear differentiation. You've established trust with your own health plan brand, but immediately after that, you want to differentiate that the next logo that's seen is standalone. And it really offers something that is unique and niche and specific to that member. And it's differentiated from the entirety of your health plan, which is shepherding the entirety of these benefits. So being really specific with the value proposition, and then also having brand specific content. If there's messaging, if the call to action, if anything about the value proposition of that program is available, you want to use that to make a clear differentiation of this brand has this value, whereas this brand has its own set of value. And simplicity. Again, we're kind of taking it back to the top of what we started with, but we never want to leave members with more questions than answers. What that means is we've just done an info dump onto the member and asked them to figure it out. Our job is to be more clear and concise than that. It's to use visuals that create easy understanding. And ultimately, we want to create a sense of value and calm. We don't want to create a sense of you're overwhelmed and you're confused. As you'll always hear from us, the best way to know if you're doing this well is to manage it, is to measure it, and is to test it and then iterate. So we are always encouraging of, hey, if we've got a couple of ideas about how we introduce a brand or how we ask members to get involved in a certain program, let's carve off a very small portion of the population, let's present it to them, and then let's measure how effective it was. Let's do it another way and see if we can get better results by either asking differently or designing an asset in a different way. But, we expect this out of every other modality of correspondence. If we're sending out emails to members, I guarantee we're measuring and managing and optimizing. If we're doing something with an SMS campaign, same thing. Those are really kind of germane tactics to both of those modalities. Is if we're sending it out, we better be getting performance information out of it. That's exactly what we want to do with everything on the printed side too. So we bled over just a little bit. Again, we wanted to make this just short and sweet, stimulate some of these ideas since we know you're all managing a huge portfolio of what you're asking to get in front of your members. As always with these, it comes down to your individual situation. So we love kind of getting in the think tank with you, creating mock-ups, creating different versions for your team to look at and to consider. So if that's ever appropriate, of course, reach out to your account executives, or if you're just newer to Clarity, you can reach out to the market email here. And it's a way we'd love to really kind of introduce our skill set and expertise on this. So with that, sorry for keeping you 3 minutes over, but hope the content was helpful. Hope everyone's off to a great holiday weekend tomorrow, and thank you very much.